Hello, dear friends. In connection with your questions, today we will talk about what enlightenment and ultimate liberation are. First, let me tell you a life story. For several years, a woman came to our classes and always asked questions. I've been attending your courses for several years now, and I'm still waiting for you to be unable to answer at least one of my questions. And you keep answering and answering, and then I became really interested in what you're saying and what questions you're answering. This is enlightenment. When there are practically no closed topics for a person, when he understands what development is, understands the laws and principles of this development. And using all this material, a person can calmly answer the questions that interest people engaged in self-development. All of this is related to the fact that a certain path has been taken, and what interests many people is already quite clear. This is one's own experience, and thanks to the experience of progressing through the stages of development, it is possible to explain to people what enlightenment and ultimate liberation are. It simply doesn't happen on its own. It is hard work. I understand that, of course, one doesn't really want to work, including working to achieve new levels, because it requires certain efforts. But those who want to achieve results are still forced to work on themselves. Not just work, but work with their dear selves, in order to quickly jump out of samsara, as we said before. Do you want to continue suffering? Or do you want to put an end to this misery sooner? That is precisely what we are talking about when we discuss the topics of enlightenment and liberation, which are part of the human path of development. This path has a program that is divided into individual incarnations or embodiments. In each reincarnation, a person must complete a specific task, a particular piece of this overall program. In this process, they must build certain structures, or what can be called their subtle bodies. We won't delve into all of these questions right now, as they are quite complex. It is a topic that involves how each structure is built, what is necessary for it, and how the process of enlightenment occurs within these structures. The word enlightenment can primarily refer to self-awareness, which gradually increases in a person. And through this self-awareness, a person understands what is happening in the surrounding world. Each of their structures or subtle bodies must acquire its own self-awareness. In other words, matter or substance must be enlightened, meaning that it must attain self-awareness and the ability to act independently of the other subtle bodies of the person. Only then they can together, consciously, perform much more grandiose things. Until a person develops all of their structures and bring them to self-awareness, it is not appropriate to talk about enlightenment. There are laws that can accelerate this development, but not everyone is capable of putting in the effort to advance and enlighten themselves. However, the fruits of labor are sweet when a person can significantly accelerate their development process. And then they live as happy as no one else, as it is sung in the Song of Lapse music. In reality, a person is the architect of their own happiness. And when this finally begins to dawn on them, they start looking for where they can find material for themselves, some knowledge, and consciously use that knowledge. As I mentioned before, there is a concept of information and a concept of knowledge. A person may even listen to this material and say, "Yes, I have known all of this for a long time," when in reality, they have only heard information. But if a person has absorbed the information to the extent that it has become knowledge for them, then it becomes a guide to action. That is when you can say that a person really knows because they are capable of applying it practically to themselves. The same thing happens in our classes. People listen to the same material repeatedly and then suddenly exclaim, "I finally understand." When a person understands the practical value of seemingly unnecessary theory, that is when it becomes their knowledge. Then they can share it with others, and it becomes clear to them. When a person deeply understands something and applies it independently, they have no questions about explaining it to others, and others can absorb it to some extent. This needs to be said, it is a very fascinating process. But before reaching this level of fascination, one needs to grow a little more. We wish for you to develop an interest in this material at a certain stage, so that you don't find it boring. But instead, when a person reaches a higher level, they live much more actively, more interestingly, and most importantly, construct their own life more competently. They become the true creator of their life. And the first thing a person should achieve in their development is to become a creator of their own life, after going through a certain experience of personal development. Afterward, they can expand this experience further, but they still have to start with themselves. When a person has truly gone through a certain path, they know what is achieved through their own experience, and then they can explain it to others excellently. And one could say that they are already enlightened within certain boundaries. Of course, there are higher boundaries for them to still go and reach, but they have gone through a certain path and attained knowledge. And what is light? They don't just say light of knowledge for no reason. That is when a person already understands certain processes, certain phenomena. They can operate with that knowledge and apply it to their actions. And that is when they become an enlightened person. There are many degrees of enlightenment, but when it comes to the human development ladder, it has its own specific boundaries. And when a person reaches the external boundary of development on the human ladder, having mastered the entire collective experience of that ladder, they achieve that final enlightenment and liberation, because they have completed the program. It is important to understand, if you have completed the program, it means that you have achieved liberation. The next step is to move on the next ladder, which can be called the superhuman path of development or the path of high evolution. But that is later. That is for the future. For now, the person must master their own stages of development. In the Bible, it is written that a person should reach such a state where both spirit and matter become one. That is the substance from which different structures of human being are composed, has achieved self-awareness. That is enlightened substance is real, and it is like the spirit, the self-aware spirit, the creative spirit, or the creative consciousness, the creator, a real creator. This is what they strive to achieve on the human ladder. The path, of course, is long, and a lot of experience needs to be accumulated on this path. But it can be accumulated sequentially. Of course, over long millennia, as humanity goes. There is a common path for the masses of people, and there is a direct path, which of course not everyone can take. And for this, one must sacrifice something within oneself, cross something within oneself, and most importantly, free oneself from laziness, which hinders even delving into some knowledge, or even searching for necessary knowledge to accelerate one's path of development. I have already drawn attention to the fact that during one of the lectures I give an example. Here are the saints. Many of them have already passed the human path of development a long time ago. And I received a question from the audience. Not even a question, but a cry. But the saints are mostly great martyrs, and we don't want to suffer. Then I asked them, let's figure it out. Yes, these saints specifically ask God for more difficulties in order to pass this path much faster. They experienced their qualities in these difficulties, which they developed for many hundreds of years. Confirming these qualities, that even in the most served situations, their love for humanity, for individual people, did not diminish in any way. So they have completed their development on the human ladder and have ascended to a much higher level. As saints who are revered by all people regardless of their religious affiliation, they help those who continue to suffer here from their elevated position, as they themselves have long since stopped suffering. But who is suffering here? Those who cannot escape the circle of samsara. They keep spinning in repetitive situations and continue to accumulate karma, as we discussed earlier. So who ultimately suffers? It is up to each individual to decide whether they want to continue suffering for millennia and accumulating more karma, or whether they want to overcome their laziness, work harder on themselves, break the vicious cycle, and ascend to a higher level. Of course, they will have to help others from their new perspective, but from a different height, having passed this magnificent way of ascent. We wish you the best of luck in overcoming your jealousy and ascending to this peak, this mountain, by showing diligence. Since some of these images are also associated with Christ, we can also talk about the second coming of Christ, which is also very important to many people.